Welcome to the Business of You podcast, the show dedicated to helping service entrepreneurs build a better brand to grow a bigger business. I'm your host, Michelle Griffin, and I'm here each week empowering you to put yourself out there, sharing actionable tips and inspiring stories so you can create your personal brand, grow your dream business, and build your future, all while making more income and more impact doing exactly what you love. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's show. Welcome everybody back to this week's edition of the Business of You podcast. I am excited today to bring you someone who is going to help us command attention with your iconic image online. So let me ask you this. Are you ready to steer your reputation? Are you ready to level up your brand? Are you ready to connect with your audience and show them who you really are? And then are you ready to create visual assets that frame you in the way you're seen and understood? Of course you are, because this is something that needs to be out there with your personal brand. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to visual strategist and international personal brand photographer, Marlana Semenza. Welcome, Marlana, to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Michelle, how are you?
I am wonderful. So tell me, Marlana, you're not just a international photographer who takes brand photos, you're a visual strategist. Tell me, why is that so important and how that works so well with personal brands?
Well, you have to understand, first of all, what the big picture is with a personal brand. And the name of your show is The Business of You. And that's exactly the way you have to approach your brand as a business. And you are the product. And just like any good product, you sell things, you sell it on the benefits and who it can help and how it can help them and things like that. Well, it's really not about you, because your personal brand is never about you. It's about who you can help, how you can help them, how you can serve them. You have to relay all of the ways that you can do that. So that's where the strategy comes in. It's figuring out, because you have to start with your audience, just like any other product. Who is this for? And once you are crystal clear on who that is for, then you can start to have the conversations with them that show why it should be.
Exactly. So yeah, I see that a lot. And I know we're going to dive in deep because we've had conversations before about some of the kind of cliche stuff you see online. And that's one of the things you were so adamant about. Show the real you. We can't have everyone looking the same in our brand photography, right? So why is it so important you've of course outlined, know who you are and who you help. Why is it so important? And what are some of the ways we can get started so we don't look like everyone else and it's reflected on the person we're here to serve?
Yeah. And I know one of the conversations you and I had was the fact that everybody seems to have photos of them talking on the phone and having coffee and working on a computer, but everybody does those things. So while I would rather see you in those images than stock, please don't use stock. If you're going to use stock, only make it as a placeholder until you can get a photo of you in there. But, everybody does these things. So what else is there to you? Because I know there's more. And so that's kind of where I start with my clients is I have a whole questionnaire that they fill out. And I want to know all the things about you, the things you love, the things you don't love, who your audience is, how you serve them, why it should be you, all of these kinds of things. And then my job, because, I know that you help people build brands. I don't help you build your brand. I don't help you monetize your brand. The only thing that I do is help communicate your brand, and I stay in my lane. But I need to know all of these elements so I can help you build that bridge with images to your audience.
So essentially we kind of do the same thing, maybe me with words and messaging, positioning, but you do that visually. And that's so important because I can tell you first impressions are sometimes the only impressions. How many times do we see someone's picture and we make that first judgment that may or may not be them? It is so important to show up as you want to be known for, as you really are, what you look like online. That's another thing. I see people online and then I see them in person and that doesn't match either, right? Tell me some of the ways when you see that and what are your best ways to avoid that? And how do you differ when you work with your clients to avoid that at all costs?
Well, I think number one, you need to keep your images current. If anything about you changes, if you lose or gain weight, if you lose or gain hair, if you, change your hair color, women seem to change more often than men do. But any change you need to update your images. And the other thing too is if you're looking at your images, keep in mind hairstyles and clothing and things like that. If it looks like it's a couple of years, it's time. It's really time. But other than that, I think generally the other thing too is with women, we like to have our hair and makeup done for photos. I love that. However, you want to make sure that maybe you do a trial run with your hair and makeup person because you don't want to get to your session and not look like.
Yes, yes, I've done that. We've all gone to get our hair done. It's like, oh, that's not what I thought. And then you're all the time and money we've invested, the
Right.
whole time you don't feel confident, right? So
Mhm.
that's a great strategy. Well, one of the things I see is, like you said, you and I've had this conversation. I am a completely against stock photos. Like you said, if you have to use them, maybe edit them or whatever. But the problem with stock photos that it's on every else's website. You know,
Exactly.
they're everywhere. That doesn't define you as a personal brand or help you stand out. Now, another thing is then people go, okay, well, I'm going to get brand photography. The problem is no one does a shot list or has a unique idea. They just go and look and see what everyone else does. Like you
Right.
said, drinking at a coffee shop, on their MacBook and on their phone.
Right.
And sometimes I honestly think that people, and this is not a knock to anybody. I get it. You know, we've all been there, but I want to, like you, encourage people to take their personal brand, make it like you, because that's what you're the business of you. That's the whole point. Like you said, how do I find, I know you said know who you are and stuff, but how does that translate into locations and shot lists? Give me some best strategies so we can think outside the box for our brand photography.
Well, first of all, when you are looking to hire a brand photographer, take a long, hard look at their website, their social media, things like that, because what you see is pretty much what you're going to get. So if they are showing you photos like that and you're seeing, the same person or different people doing the same thing, that could be an issue. Also, take a look at if you are a light and bright and airy kind of brand, and that's not the imaging that you're seeing, that's not what you're going to get. Do your homework first. And then also, have a conversation with them about how do you go about telling stories? How are you going to go about telling my story to make me look different? So really do your research and interview your photographer.
That's a good point. And I don't know. I mean, if someone can't communicate me and show different pictures, then that's probably not the best person for me. Because here's the thing, just like every personal brand is different and for different people are going to resonate, then there's lots of different photography styles too, right?
Exactly.
Some are more creative, more story-based, more off the wall. So you're going to vibe with that person. That's a good point. Their work, what should speak volumes being a photographer, their website, their social media should speak. You should know exactly if they communicate it right, like you do. On when I go to your site, I know exactly what I'm getting. There's no second guess. And I want to tell you, because in my past job, working with photographers in corporate and conference photography, I was let down so many times. I think what I was getting is not what I'm getting, even when I gave them shot lists. And it's just so hard to communicate that. And then when you get it, it's so disappointing after thousands of dollars I spent with these people. What can we do to ensure that what we want to communicate is actually what we're going to get? Like there's sometimes miscommunication. How do we avoid that?
Well, I know for me, number one, let's first go back to the photographer. Don't ever assume that just because somebody is a photographer, they can do everything. You want somebody that specializes in this. Don't hire a wedding photographer to shoot your interiors. Don't hire an interior photographer to shoot your wedding. All these kinds of things. People are specialized for a reason. So that's the first thing. And I know for me, when I go about telling somebody's story, after we finish that questionnaire, we have a long conversation about what those answers were. By the time we get to actual taking the photos, we've had several conversations along the way. And when we have that second conversation, I will then go back to them again and show them images that are, we're not going to copy them, but for inspiration. And say, this is the kind of thing that I'm thinking. This is the kind of thing that I'm thinking. So this way we are on the same page.
That's a good idea.
And then this way, they can say, well, I'm not so crazy about this, or instead of this, can we do this way? You get it right the first time.
It's kind of like a vision board for what you're
exactly.
So you kind of line and then you're using your creative input. Okay, well, that's the thing, because I would go as far as writing when I was doing my previous job of like, hey, make sure you capture this and this. And I guess seeing it in words is totally different than pictures. That's a great idea. Now, when I've worked with some of my clients, I'm like, you got to get a brand photographer. So good point. Someone who does imagery for personal brands, portraits. It's not even like a portrait headshot person. I mean, if you can find someone who completely specializes personal brand photography. They know what it's like. Oh, I know you're going to need this angle for
Right.
social media,
Right.
repurposing.
And also, not to interrupt you, but I
No,
do
go
want to
ahead.
just make this one point about headshot photographers.
Mm-hmm.
People need to not confuse your head with your brand
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
they are not one and the same.
They're totally stiff and fake.
A headshot to me is like a book title. It gives you an introduction, but that's all that it does.
Yeah.
But the reason that we invest and we buy the book is always for the story. That's what your brand
Oh,
photography
what a
should
good
do.
analogy. I knew you were a visual strategist when you threw that good stuff out. No, that's so true. I mean, like you can go get a headshot at the post office for your
Right.
passport.
Right.
Not talking this. We're talking imagery that communicates your brand. And we
Correct.
need it. Like I totally need to get it done. I just been so busy, but I'm like you. I want it. This is a big investment, you know, of my time, my brand. I want to get it right. And so I want to communicate my colors, my look. I want to communicate who I am. That is the blend of me. Doesn't look like everyone else, but is also not boring.
Right.
It takes a lot of work. And so that's why I'm having you here today to make sure people know the importance of having it and what it really takes. So you're not
Right.
disappointed. And one of the things I like to is showing the shots, but also in the context of how I'm going to use them on my website. Or, you know, a lot of times now we take our pictures and we put overlays on them. So you want to have those shots where that can be repurposed. So that's really huge. Now tell me how you work with your clients to have their images work online and social media. Tell me how you, so we can repurpose it.
Yeah. In that questionnaire is also, how do you plan on using them?
Okay.
So I know what you're going to use them for and how they're going to be used, all those kinds of things. And then it just, if you need a LinkedIn header, for example, that LinkedIn header is long and thin. So I need to be able to give you enough air around an image that you can crop it to that. But when I deliver my images to my clients, which is another thing, you should be getting full-sized JPEGs, not web size, because you need to be able to do whatever you need to be able to do with these to make you money. So you need to be able to have to crop them as you need them, all that kind of thing. When I deliver my images, I deliver a full size set, a web size set, and then I also will crop them to square and give them the squares for Instagram as full and web. This way you don't have to think about it. And my crop is usually going to be better than a random crop.
So have your photographer, another huge point, have your photographer know the social media sizes. You're not, because sometimes like you get a picture and you crop it to, you know, Instagram story size, it's ruined. So huge points. It's catching, thank you, it's catching on. But because I've had pictures, I'm like, oh, can't use it. But so we're doing these to hopefully have an investment of what, a couple years at least, you know, as long as we don't change too much, you would think like on average every 2 years.
It depends because you're inviting people into your story. So just like your story is fluid, your images should be fluid also. How many you need, it depends on how often you're going to post, where you're going to use them, all that kind of thing. But if you hire a photographer, let's say, to work with on a yearly basis, that's another thing that you want to make sure. You want to make sure that your personalities mesh because you're going to be working together often. You're going to get to know each other well, and you want to be able to work with somebody that you actually like.
Oh, totally. I mean, with any business relationship, the fit is everything.
Exactly.
Well, you know, one of the things we're talking about here is having your pictures and you presented, but I see a lot of brand photography and some of it done so well where the people are, you know, I guess, you know, obviously it's like a pseudo mock-up of how you would interact with a client or something like that, you know, because a lot of our audience here are consultants, you know, in the business professionals, they're in a relationship business working with services and clients.
Right.
How do you position those so they look pretty realistic? Telling the story, but not look completely like a stock photo?
Well, once again, it depends on, I actually just did some for a client and they had actual clients of theirs come in.
Okay.
And they walked through exactly what they would do. Then I'm able to capture the actual experience of what they were doing. Because the plus side to having these staged photos is I can stop you from talking as needed because nobody wants to look that odd look when their mouth is moving. But also too, you have to remember there's also a legality to these. So whoever is in these images, you have to get a release from because otherwise you will not be able to use them.
Okay, great point. I wonder how many people do that. Another thing too, I've given presentations, you know, a lot of virtual in the last year, but you know, the ones that I have taken of me, obviously I haven't had a professional take them. They're not usable. Like my mouth's open or my eyes closed. I mean, you know, they're me in the moment in front of a group of people, but they're just not usable. So how do you do the shot where, you know, someone wants to look like a thought leader authority? They are presenting to people. So you need a group of people. I mean, can you crop the scene so it looks more, I mean, we're not trying to be, we're not giving a false sense here, but how do you
Right.
give that image of speaking? Because that's really important when a lot of my audience does that as well.
Keep in mind too, if you need images of you speaking and you can't have them done when you are actually speaking for any reason, because I would suggest that if you can, but if you can't, then generally the room is dark. So that's going to add to it. Once the room is dark, I only need to really have a few people to give the illusion of it being a crowded room.
Yeah.
And bring them up close to me. So they're filling the frame and I'm shooting past them.
Okay. Good things to think. Because, sometimes in the moment, we forget or we don't have the resources or someone to help us. These are all things we need to think about. And before we jump into some of the mistakes that people make, because I do want to highlight, we've done some. What's the best way to get a shot list? I know you said find pictures, but what are some creative, let's ask you this. What are some creative poses, scenes that aren't cookie cutter that you're suggesting or you work with your clients that we could think about for ourselves and our personal brand?
It really depends on who you are and the story you want to tell. I know for me in my head, it's an exhausting world because I always want to push the scene and push the creativity of something. But for example, I believe they're on my website. There was a woman that I worked with in a wheelchair and she has spina bifida. She runs a nonprofit and the nonprofit works with people who have disabilities and gets them involved through adaptive. The first image that we showed of her was her in her wheelchair in a dark hallway because she wanted people to understand that she knows what that feels like. But we have her positioned where she is facing a doorway that's lit up and she wants people to know that there's always a way out of that hallway and there's always light and you move toward it.
That's powerful.
The next image was to show that she wanted them to think beyond their disability to the things that they can do. She's a champion kayaker. So we went down to the lake and we flipped her wheelchair over and I shot through the wheelchair to her in her kayak. So you could think past the things you can't do to the things that you can do. It's these kinds of images. And if you don't do it for a living, don't put that pressure on yourself to do it and to come up with these ideas, because that's why you hire a photographer, to give you the things that you can't do for yourself.
So the key I'm hearing is tell them I don't want to look like everyone else. Weave my story in symbolically, even as this client you had. And wow, that's powerful. So in my mind, as you're telling me this, I'm visualizing this. I can see it. So that's the power of photography, I can't wait to go back to your website and look at it. I've been on your website, but I need to go dig on it. So yeah, do you see when you invest in something that tells the story of who you are, it matches the story of your brand that, we work so hard to be known for and to show up online? These are powerful, powerful examples and ideas. So thank you for that. I'm going to flip the switch and tell me, before we get in your 3 top tips, which is our signature tips for this subject, what are some of the common mistakes that we haven't touched on today that you see people make in personal brand photography?
Hiring the wrong person. And also too, I see a lot of posing mistakes too.
Interesting. Tell me more about that.
For example, women love, I don't know where it all came from, but women love to do the same pose where the hand is on their hip and the hip is kicked out toward camera. What you just succeeded in doing was making that whole hip area look bigger than it, because these different body types are posed differently. You pose lean bodies different than curvy bodies and men different than women, but anything that you push toward camera gets bigger. If you want your hip to look smaller, you put your weight on your back foot and kick it away from.
That's something we could take away today and do no matter what. You're taking pictures of your family anytime. That's huge. I didn't know that.
If you feel the need to put your hand on your hip, it doesn't go on your hip, it goes on your
waist. Oh, and I know we do that because we want our arms to look leaner, right?
And the smallest part of your body too. You want to draw attention to the smallest part of your body.
Okay, so on your waist and not your hip. Okay, everybody listening today, even if you're not going to do brand photography, this is the most important thing right now. Hands on your hip, kick your hip out away from camera to look smaller than you are, or not to over accentuate bigger than you are. Is that correct?
And there's actually an example of that on my Instagram if you scroll through.
Okay. And we're going to give everyone where exactly to go find you and look these up, because I know this is going to be a huge tip. People are going to be looking for that. Okay. Those are some mistakes. Any last ones that you can think of? Not stock photography, please, right?
Not stock.
Okay.
Just communicate with your photographer. And if you don't like something, say you don't like it.
But you should know by the time you hire them if you're going to fit with them or not. We're all
Yeah,
in a relationship business here. A lot of this audience, our audience here in this community, it's all mostly services, and you're going to know right away. So if there's not someone you don't feel like, you're getting each other there, I'm sure there's someone else. There's someone for everyone.
exactly.
That's why you need to bring out your personal brand and your website, and all you do, people already feel like they know you, they like you and trust you. And so you
Right.
don't have to have these conversations, or worse, make a mistake hiring
Right.
the wrong person. When we become the product of our brand in service to others, that shortens the process, and it
Right.
makes for a good fit. That's good. I've already told Marlena that if I lived closer, we would be having photography. But that's a good point. I want to ask and bring this attention, because are you still offering that service? Tell us about what you started doing during COVID, and if that's still a thing, and how
It
one
is
would
still a
do that.
thing.
Okay, this is brilliant, guys. Listen to this.
I actually started doing virtual photos. And if you've seen, I think the most famous one right now that people may have seen is the maternity photos of Meghan Markle with Prince Harry. Those were shot virtually. I can do that. So it's still the same process. The only difference is you will be a little more involved in setting up the shot. I'll still coach you through it, but I'm taking the photo in the end. So it's still me walking you through it and saying, okay, now look right, look left, and I'm the one hitting the shot.
Because you're live streaming your video, your camera, right? Is that what
Correct.
essentially it is?
Correct.
Okay. And the photography quality is just as good. Now, I think you said it's more for web and social,
It
not so
is.
much
It
like
is.
higher res. Okay. But so, let's think about this. You could take someone across the world. I mean, anywhere you could help someone. So
Yeah.
if someone wanted to do that, they just go to your website, which we'll tell them about soon, because
Yeah.
that's brilliant. Like, if you really find a hit with someone and you want some social media and website pictures, that is an option now. You don't have to find someone locally if that's not someone
Right.
that is specializing, because let's face it, there's not a ton, maybe where I am, but I mean, I know they're out there. But do you feel like personal brand photography is just becoming more of a thing now? Or
I do. But just like, there's a lot of different photographers in every genre. And I am a big advocate of the fact that there is enough work out there for everybody.
Me too.
And there is a photographer for everybody. So, but just interview them to find out if they're the right one for you, because I know that I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. And I am happy to refer you to others that might be a better fit.
That's exactly what I do with my branding business, personal brand. I feel like for the clients I have that we hit it off, we are just, but it's great. It's nothing to take personally, right? We're all
No, not at
different
all.
human, and we just fit. It's the best way to say it. It's the most generous and kind way to say if we're fit or not, and no harm. So,
And at the end of the day, I want
the
the
best
best for
experience.
you.
Exactly. That's what I tell everyone. I'm not here. It's not about me. It's about you. That's
Right.
my personal brand.
Mhm.
It is about me, but it's for you. That's the way
Right.
I say it. So, okay. The best part of this is I get to interview people like you, subject matter experts in your area, or people who have told us their story of their personal brand. And they always have 3 top tips that we love to take. And then we put them out in social media, because these are the 3 nuggets, the 3 top tips we should know about personal brand photography. Can you tell us what those are in your mind, in your view?
The top tips about personal brand
Yeah,
photography.
or your 3 takeaways if someone wants to do personal brand photography and get out there and doing exactly what you do to put your reputation and your iconic image online. What would you suggest?
The biggest one is trust your photographer. Because once you've developed that relationship, you can tell in images who had complete trust in their photographer and who didn't, to me. So that's the first thing. Number 2, always understand that this is a partnership. And so express your opinion, say whatever you want to see in these images, and communicate that back and forth until you come to a mutual understanding of what that is. And the last one, make sure that you continue to build your bank of images so that you have them to pull from, and they're of you, and use them often. Because keep in mind, even in social media, the person that sees a post, I think it's some ridiculously low amount of percentage of the people that follow you that see a post.
Yep.
So you can use that image over again, maybe not the next day, but you can certainly use that image over.
Exactly. As we repurpose content, we can repurpose our imagery, add different background color, brand color overlays, change up the fonts. And so, yeah, so you're making an investment in yourself when you do personal brand photography. It also should have some staying power, 3 pictures and, recycle. There's certainly ways to do that. So those are wonderful 3 tips. Thank you so much, Marlena. We're going to definitely highlight those. Get that out there. Now, another favorite and iconic part of my interview here is something that really means a lot to me and to our audience. What is your favorite personal or professional mantra you want to share to help us all build our personal brands?
I have a couple. The first one I have to say is I operate from a core belief that everybody deserves to be seen for the best of who they are and shown in a unique way. So that's always something that I'm striving to do. And the other thing that I would say is a piece of advice that I heard from a girl that I was in a networking group with. And she said, ask, you already have no. And I think if you use in whatever situation, you already have no. So what's the worst that happens?
I love that. That's one of my beliefs too, which I need to practice more than I think. So thank you for that. Those are brilliant. Every day, every guest I've interviewed, either on the podcast or live, has given me so many nuggets. And one day I'm going to do a big post about that. But your first one about everyone deserves to be seen has a lot on my belief and my message of put yourself out there. Because everyone deserves to be seen. What was it? Everyone deserves to be seen for who they are. Is that what you said it was?
In a unique way for the best of who they are.
Okay. Yeah. So those go hand in hand. That's why we get along so well, because we're both on a mission to help people do the same thing. You just visually.
And also too, if you have a gift and you truly believe that you have a valuable service or you can help somebody, if you don't share that, that's kind of selfish.
It really is. Yeah. It's not about, let's just keep re-hitting this, put yourself out there. It's not about you. It's how you're helping others. You know, your gifts are given to you for a reason to go and help others and to build the business of you, your personal brand. Marlana, thank you so much. You've given me so many valuable tips, and I know our listeners. Where can people find you if they want to know more and go check out those beautiful pictures you described as well?
The best two places really are where I work is my website, which is marlanasemenza.com. And on there, you can also find the virtual content creation. If you want to go directly to that page, the URL photographerinyourpocket.com will also get you to that page. But where I play is Instagram. Then that's marlana.photo.
And let's give yourself a shout out, because I was actually recently on your podcast, Your Iconic Image, where you can learn your interviewing. Tell us a little bit about that podcast real quick, because it's really good.
That podcast deals with all of the things that I don't do, but they all go into building your brand. Some of it's mindset. We had an episode about imposter syndrome. You were on there to talk about, building your brand. I've had this week's episode is from a gentleman who actually won the Super Bowl, and it's how to win the Super Bowl. And that's all about mindset. I had a gentleman on there who is the owner of the president of the Houston Texans, about how to build an iconic brand from nothing. It's all of the things that, like I said, I don't deal with that go into building a brand.
Yeah. And then we can find you on all the Apple podcasts, everywhere you go. And also probably a link to your website. Yeah. I highly recommend you check that out. She puts it out every week as well. And then all through social. Go check her out on Instagram. Marlana, thank you so much. I can't wait to someday get my pictures made by you, because your work is gorgeous.
Oh,
and
thank you
I would
so
be
very
honored
much.
someday to be your story. You tell my story. For all of us out there from the business you, I want to thank you for showing up as our guest today. Thank you for your time. And I cannot wait to have you back again and someday travel to North Carolina. Thank you for your time, and we'll catch you again next week on the Business of You show. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We definitely need more impactful entrepreneurs like you out there. So if you'd like to learn more about how I can help you build your personal brand to grow your business, please check out yourbrandyourbusiness.com. And until next time, you have a brand to build, a message to share, and people to impact. Now go put yourself out there and watch the business of you grow.